This conversation was just amusing. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you're returning, welcome back. I appreciate your continued support, and I hope that you are subscribed as well, especially if you are watching this on Rumble. This is a platform that we need to continue to build up so that we can support platforms that support free speech. So I came across this particular conversation a couple of weeks ago, and it has just kind of been weighing on my brain. And the whole time I was watching it, I was just going, So I'm going to bring you into this chat, and we are going to break it down because there is a lot to unpack here. So this particular conversation took place on a channel called talktv, and it looks to be something that is based in the UK. So we've got our host, Vanessa Felix, and she's talking about a new law in the UK that would protect single-sex schools if they choose to reject transgender applicants who want to pretend that they're the opposite biological sex. And it goes both ways. So if you're a biological male, you would not be able to change your name and put on a dress and then try to get into an all-girl school. And if you're a biological girl, you would not be able to take testosterone and then try to get into an all-boys school. And it would even protect teachers who choose not to use opposite sex pronouns. So they wouldn't be forced to call a girl a he, him, or a boy a she, her. In other words, it would keep society from being forced to participate in this rapidly spreading mental illness of the woke mob. And every single time I have to look at one of these conversations, I always ask myself, like, why is this something that we even need to talk about? But as long as the woke mob continues to try to push this into every aspect of society, it is a topic that we are going to continue to discuss. So again, Vanessa Felix is the host, and she is moderating the conversation between a woman named Naomi Cunningham, who is the co-founder of an organization called Sex Matters. And on the other side of the conversation, we have an individual named Felix Van, who is the co-founder of Trans Activism UK. And the host starts out by asking Felix how he feels about trans kids not being able to attend one of these same-sex schools. But mind you, it's not that they cannot attend one of these schools. It's just that they have to go to the one that aligns with their biology. Now, I know that the woke mob would push that this is discriminatory and use the talking point that they're keeping trans kids out of these schools, and that's not the case at all. It's just that if you are biologically male, you have to go to an all-boys school, and if you're biologically female, you do have to go to the all-female school. It's not that hard.
So we're talking about same-sex schools, so all girls or all boys, and the possibility that trans children or pupils would not be able to attend. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'd like to begin just by saying, so my name is Felix, my pronouns are he, they. I just wanted to check before I begin if Naomi could confirm her pronouns for me. I'd say her, I could be wrong, so it'd be great if Naomi could tell me their pronouns.
Even the start of the conversation is a little bit amusing to me. And it's interesting because as much as I see stuff like this happening online and videos of people experiencing things like this, I have yet to experience this personally in my own life. So if you have come face to face with somebody who has introduced themselves to you by using their pronouns and declaring their pronouns, drop it in the comments about how you handled that situation. And if you have not had that happen yet, have you thought about how you would respond to it? And I don't mean this to be mean. It's just, I think a lot of us would be inclined with this knee-jerk reaction to just go along with it because we really, truly don't want to cause conflict. We're not confrontational. We just want to keep the peace. And truly, at the core, a lot of us do want to be respectful of other human beings. But at the same time, it is getting to a place where we have to draw these lines. And I think it's important to at least have an idea ahead of time of how you would respond to this while still being respectful to that person, but also standing your ground on your own beliefs.
No, I'm not going to tell you my pronouns.
Why would you like to know Naomi's pronouns? You might as well ask me mine, which you can ask with pleasure if you want to. Do you?
Yeah, I would like to, actually. Yes, Vanessa, what are your pronouns?
Well, I'm she, her. I'm mother of 2 daughters and grandma to 4 grandchildren, and I'm she, her. But I wonder why you want my guest, Naomi, whom you don't know, to tell you her pronouns before we even start.
To show how simple it is. So the conversation, or one of the big conversations, is whether or not preferred pronouns should be allowed in schools or something that should be respected for transgender students. That's as simple as the conversation is. My name is this, my pronouns are this, you ask someone what their pronouns are, that's it. No other issues. It doesn't cause any contention for anyone. That's honestly as complex and as difficult as the subject gets. So from my point of view, as a transgender person who has been through the school system, though quite a long time ago, I don't personally understand why such a simple topic is being blown out of proportion and made so that students who would just like to get on with their everyday learning should be made to feel as though this very small part of their identity should make them uncomfortable and feel unsafe and disrespected within a school environment.
I do have to say that I would probably respond in the way that Naomi responded just here and saying, I'm not going to declare my pronouns. I am not going to participate in this, in the idea that people can choose the pronouns that they want and that identity is just this thing that we can throw around and change at the drop of a hat. And I love how he says, well, this is how easy it is. This is how non-complex it is, as if the issue is difficulty, because nobody is saying that this is a difficult thing. It is not difficult for me to utter those words. There's nothing physically exhausting about it. It's mentally exhausting for sure. But I love how he says, like, there's no other issues. That is until you use pronouns on someone who does not want you to use those pronouns. Then it becomes an issue. And if the argument is that it's that easy just to make somebody feel comfortable, what about how easy it would be for you to make me feel comfortable and not force me to use pronouns that don't align with reality? Because it does make me uncomfortable to have to use pronouns like she, her for a boy and he, him for a girl, or they to refer to a singular person because it doesn't align with what's real. I wouldn't call an anorexic person fat because it's what they believe is true. I wouldn't acknowledge the voices that a schizophrenic person hears because they insist that those voices are real, and I wouldn't tell somebody that's depressed that life sucks because it's something that they believe. This is a mental illness, and when you look in the mirror and you see things about yourself or you believe things about yourself that are not true, then there is something there that needs to be addressed, and that is not to mock mental illness. In fact, expecting society to go along with what your mental illness tells you is true and pretending that something isn't wrong is actually what mocks mental illness.
It's often said by activists on the other side of this debate that this is just a simple courtesy. All you have to do is ask people their pronouns and announce your own and fall in with whatever other people want. It's not as simple as that. If you ask me to declare my pronouns, you ask me to express my assent to a belief system that I don't subscribe to. And that's quite bullying.
This is 100% true, especially in America where free speech is a protected right and it is not contingent upon whether or not you like what I have to say or you agree with what I believe. You don't get to force me to use she, her in reference to a boy. You don't get to force me to use he, him in reference to a girl. You don't get to force me to use they, them in reference to an individual person. And you don't get to force me to use pronouns that aren't even words. Just like I don't get to force you to call me a tomato or to refer to me as the wealthiest person in the world, and I don't get to force you to say that you're a Christian that believes in God. It's no one's right to force you to say something, even if you don't like what they have to say, and even if you don't agree with what it is that they believe. And it's also your choice, just like in any other situation where your feelings might get hurt, to not allow your feelings to get hurt. People say horrible things to me every single day. The private messages that I get are sometimes absolutely abhorrent. But these people, they have the right to say those things, and I don't have a right to demand a law be passed to stop them. It is my job to move on from it and to let it go. That's how simple it is. That's how non-complex it is. This issue doesn't get complex until you do try to force a belief system on people that is based on feelings alone. It might hurt my feelings if you decide not to call me a mermaid and I want to be called a mermaid. And that might sound silly, but you've already demonstrated that it's more important to not hurt people's feelings than it is to adhere to reality. And if you can't draw a line and say that reality matters anywhere, can you draw a line and say that it matters at all at any point? Because once you do run the risk of hurting people's feelings. You will eventually find yourself agreeing with things that even you know aren't true.
I'm so glad you guys are doing this.
Oh, yeah.
For dogs. My dog came out of the closet recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you either believe reality matters or you don't.
Everyone should be entitled to their personal belief, but from my point of view, it's more of a simple grammatical issue rather than an ideological one. It seems very overcomplicated to me to make sure just that a simple thing of every one of your students feels safe and comfortable. If you take away part of their identity and say that for some kind of ideological belief system that you cannot refer to them by a simple pronoun, what you're saying is, I don't see you as an individual human being, so I'm going to overlook anything that makes you comfortable. And that feels quite bullying and dangerous to me.
In the same clip, he went from, it's just a simple issue of grammar, to it is now bullying and dangerous not to go along with it. I kind of feel like that escalated quickly. But if you want to talk about an ideology that is dehumanizing and that steals children's unique identity, try telling them that they can change their name and pronouns at any time. Try telling them that how they are made has no unique significance whatsoever, and that the true identity of human beings is to not be male or female, boy or girl, man or woman, or mother or father, but to be this generic brand of human being that has no meaning whatsoever. Try telling a girl that a boy in a dress is exactly the same as she is, or telling a boy that a girl can grow facial hair and be exactly the same as he is.
Felix just said everyone is entitled to their own belief. And I very much agree with that. That's quite an important thing. If you require all the children in a school and all the teachers in a school to use the pronouns, the counterfactual, the non-reality-based pronouns of a particular child who is a girl but says she's a boy, or who is a boy but says he's a girl, then those other children's and those teachers' rights are engaged as well. It's not just a matter of being kind to one individual and respecting that individual's rights. It's also a matter of respecting the rights of all the other children and adults in the school to their own belief, which Felix has just said that Felix respects.
According to every trans activist, they say that it's about respecting everyone's beliefs and it's about inclusivity, but it never is. As we see day after day, those of us who say we don't believe in gender ideology are called names, and we're threatened and we're harassed and bullied.
I don't believe that gender is this immutable thing where if you are one sex, that's it. And I think that if you do believe that, 100% fine, you're entitled to that, but you cannot necessarily force that belief onto others. Naomi believes that my using the pronouns that people prefer, that make them comfortable, that make them feel respected, is me forcing that ideology onto others by saying, well, this person uses their pronouns, therefore, by using them, you're agreeing with them. I think that's overcomplicating things. I think that it is respectful and decent to speak to people how they wish to be spoken to. It does not mean that you are somehow violating your own personal beliefs. I think that's a little bit silly, personally.
He's conflating gender with gender expression. These people twist themselves into knots unnecessarily because they assume that there are a bunch of us going around that believe that just because you're a boy or a girl or a man or a woman, then you're going to be forced to adhere to male and female things. Like if you're a boy or a man, you are going to have to like cars and you have to like football and you have to like the color blue and you have to like tools. And if you're a girl or a woman, then you'll have to like dolls and you have to like princesses and the color pink and you have to enjoy doing things like cooking and cleaning. Their logic is that if you stray from these stereotypes in any way, then that means that you have to be referred to the opposite sex pronouns, even though you don't adhere to every stereotype of the opposite sex either. Their entire argument is based on this idea that there are those of us that are just forcing the stereotypes on boys and girls and men and women, and that the only way that you can truly express your gender is to change your pronouns. And if you want to express yourself in the way that you truly want to, that you can't use these traditional labels, that you can't be a boy that is happy being called a boy if you like things that maybe are more stereotypically girl, and you can't be a girl that will be happy being called a girl if you like things that might be more stereotypically boy. It is just an ideology that twists people into knots, and it's based on things that are absolutely not true in any sense. And he repeated himself several times saying, I believe this is about gender and I believe that it is about identity. Exactly, it's a belief. And he spent several sentences saying how you don't have the right to force beliefs on someone else. But interestingly enough, it's not forcing a set of beliefs on someone to tell them they have to go along with declaring their pronouns and calling someone whatever they feel like being called, but it is forcing beliefs on someone if I choose not to. It's just incredibly inconsistent all across the board, and it is just full of double standards.
If children and adults in a school are required to go along with a change of pronouns so that they refer to a girl as he or a boy as she, that is an aspect of what is often referred to as social transition. And as Hilary Cass has said in her interim report into the treatment of gender distress in young people, that's a very serious intervention in itself. It's something that's capable of entrenching gender distress in a young person and making it much harder for them to go back. If they've gone through a phase of thinking that they are the opposite sex, if they've required everybody around them to pretend that they are the opposite sex and everyone around them has indulged that, it's going to make it much more difficult for them to row back.
Once kids start down this path, it is very hard to reverse course, and it increases their chances drastically of moving into one of these more permanent and severe forms of transition. And I've heard numerous stories from parents who have been through this experience with their kids, where their kids only changed their pronouns because their friends were doing it and because it's not cool to just be a boy or just be a girl. There's so much influence on these kids to be a part of it, and they're not doing it because they're uncomfortable with being called a boy or girl, or they're uncomfortable with traditional labels. They're doing it because everybody else is, and they don't want to be the kid that doesn't. This movement plays heavily on the insecurities and the lack of maturity of young kids and their overwhelming desire to just fit in.
Or do you think you just simply say, you know, I thought I was this, but now I think I'm this? Everybody's changed and it's not that much of a big deal.
I can tell you firsthand that that's categorically not correct. So I use the pronouns he, they, because I did for a very long time identify as binary transmasculine. So I used only he, him pronouns. I came out as trans when I was 13. That was 21 years ago. Mm-hmm. I no longer identify that way. I now identify as non-binary. Changing those has not been difficult for me. I've had moments in my life where I thought perhaps I want to change entirely. And I've dabbled with it and I've experimented with it. And it's been fine, and it has not harmed me deeply. And I fully support people who do get to the stage where they wish to go back.
All of these trans activists make everything about gender ideology seem completely harmless, and they talk down to us in a very condescending way, making it seem like we're the ones that are overreacting. And it's actually pretty vile because kids are being irreversibly harmed because of how downplayed this stuff is. They'll say if a child changes their pronouns, it's no big deal. If a child changes their name, it's no big deal. If a boy wants to put on a dress and go in the girls' locker room, it's no big deal. If a boy wants to change his name and take a girl's athletic scholarship from her, it's no big deal. If a teen wants to be put on puberty blockers or estrogen or testosterone, it's no big deal. If a 15-year-old girl wants to get a double mastectomy, it's no big deal. If a teen ends up sterilized and unable to have their own kids, or their reproductive organs do not develop properly, or their mental health plummets, or if their voice never deepens or it never goes back to normal, or if they have unwanted facial hair that they are going to have to shave forever, none of this is a big deal to them.
My name is Stephanie Nguyen. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist with 10 years of experience counseling a diverse array of individuals and families. Detransitioners are a uniquely traumatized and rapidly growing population with complex needs. One of their most common grievances is that when they initially sought counseling for their gender-related distress, mental health professionals simply affirmed their gender identity and ushered them along a path of social and medical transition without exploring their reasons for wanting to transition or properly assessing their psychiatric comorbidities, trauma history, family dynamics, or internalized homophobia, and how all of these might play a role. Detransitioners now suffer mental and physical anguish daily, including pelvic pain, surgical scar pain, vaginal atrophy, infertility, inability to orgasm, inability to breastfeed, urinary tract infections, metabolic and endocrine disruption, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disorders, and early dementia. All of these ailments place them at increased risk of depression and suicide. These vulnerable patients were victims of therapists who neglected their duty to ask questions, evaluate comorbidities, encourage self-acceptance, and support healthy long-term decisions.
It's because they keep downplaying the effects of this ideology, everything from socially transitioning to medical transitioning, and then they silence the people that are deeply affected by it. That makes this so disgusting and so vile, and it makes it so that we can't be quiet about it. We have got to keep talking about it. We have got to keep pointing these things out, because it's not going away. As I've said before, it is just getting worse and worse. We are seeing more laws being passed where kids can just go into a state and get mutilating surgery without their parents' consent. There was a bill that I was reading about I believe it was in Washington, that is being proposed to support kids that run away and want to get these surgeries, essentially just saying that kids are old enough to make these decisions and they don't need their parental involvement. And all of these bills are based on the idea that parents are abusive until proven innocent, until proven otherwise. And their idea of abuse is not affirming a child in this way, not going along with these harmless pronouns and harmless name changes and harmless forms of social expression. It is a big deal, and it's something that we need to keep talking about. So let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Also, just to help me with the algorithm, you can leave an emoji in the comments below. There's also a tip button if you want to tip the channel and support my channel in that way. Also, just a reminder that on Thursday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Central Time and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I do a live podcast with The Joe Mobley Show. It'll be streamed on YouTube, Rumble, Getter, Facebook. If we can figure out Twitter, we'll do it there too. But we're going to be talking about a whole host of things tonight. There have been so many things going on. We're going to be talking about Tucker Carlson. We're going to be talking about the Texas shooter. We're going to be talking some things about Trump. So we're going to go into a whole bunch of things. And I love it when you guys interact with us and ask questions, and we can have an actual conversation about what's going on. So join us tonight for that show, and I will see you then. Bye.